It is no secret that Cantarella and Zhezhi have two very similar kits, but they also have very big differences. They are both sub-DPS characters who are mainly built around buffing the skill damage of allies, while also being quite good at applying coordinated attacks to stack up things like Ginji's Incandescence and running Empyrean Anthem. But who is better? That's what I'm going to be answering today. First, the categories that I want to look at. The first category that I'm going to talk about is going to be their damage output. As a sub-DPS, your damage output is very important. It's one of the very few things that sets you apart from other sub-DPSs, considering most sub-DPSs are only going to be able to buff through their Ultra skill, which have fixed values that Kuro intends to stay with. So your damage output is one of the very few things you can actually be different in. Second off, I want to talk about rotation time. How long your rotation takes is one of the biggest factors when it comes to any sub-DPS in this game. No real exceptions here, to be honest. There's a reason characters like Jianxin and Taoche are forever condemned to not be best in slot with anyone, because their rotation takes so long that it's never really worth it to go through it. Therefore, your rotation time is very important. And then the final factor will be additional utility. If you have any extra utility within your kit, that is very useful, because some forms of additional utility allow you to simply increase your DPS's damage in an indirect way. For example, with Rochia's attack buff that no other sub-DPS has real access to. So what are the additional factors that these two are packing to make them good and unique? Starting with the first factor being their damage output. Now the issue here is that Kuro Games is incredibly good at balancing their characters, and it's kind of ridiculous to be honest. Almost every single character that shares their role usually ends up having very similar damage, and this is consistent even with the 4 stars. So it's really hard to give anyone the win here. Zhezhi and Cantarella both have incredibly similar damage outputs, being very strong, having some of the highest damage per rotation of any sub-DPS in the game. The only real competition being Yinlin. The way that Zhezhi and Cantarella do their damage is also very similar. Cantarella and Zhezhi both have primarily basic attack damage with some skill damage in there, and most of this damage is coming from the Resonance Liberation, which deals coordinate attacks that count as basic attack damage. Like I said, they are incredibly similar, and thus it is really hard to say who does more damage. Obviously, there is just a way to figure it out, and it's called calculations. And according to mine, their damage output is so incredibly similar, but Cantarella does just slightly pull ahead. But the issue is that this is also for a large part due to her weapon. Her signature weapon simply has way more stats than that of Zhezhi. So if you put them both on something like Augment, then they're essentially the same character. So honestly, I'm gonna give the win to Cantarella here, but it's gonna be a very slight win. Next up is their rotation. Now, Zhezhi has a very established rotation at this point, which is because she's just been out for so long. And it's a very simple rotation too, but many people complain about how long it takes. But when you compare it to other sub-DPSs, you will find that Zhezhi's rotation is honestly just as long as characters like Yinlin and a little bit slower than that of Rochia. However, because of the jump cancel tech that was discovered around the time of 1.4, Zhezhi's rotations have grown to be incredibly fast, even faster than that of Yinlin, and putting her around the same level of Rochia and getting scarily close to Sanhua in terms of rotation time. So Zhezhi already has a really good edge here. However, if you look at just the sheer amount of things she has to do, and the fact that she needs a tech to make her rotation this short, you're gonna start questioning to yourself if it's really that fast and if it's really worth it. Now, we don't have much information on Cantarella's rotation yet, mainly due to the fact that currently I'm unable to test her. However, I do have a rotation for her in the works, starting with her intro skill, Liberation, and then her skill, Heavy Attack to enter Mirage, 3 basics, and then her enhanced skill again, and then Echo, and you can swap out. Obviously, you can do the Echo whenever you want, because I'm assuming Hekate here. You can tell from this rotation that it simply is less acts than Zhezhi. She just simply has to do less. But a part of this is because of her passive that gives her concerto energy based on the amount of echo skills you use. So if you're ever in a scenario where you're not able to use her enhanced skill or her ultimate, your concerto energy generation goes down by quite a bit, and she's punished more than Zhezhi is for not being able to do her full rotation. One of Zhezhi's biggest strengths is the fact that she is so flexible with her rotation, being able to precast her liberation and then able to do just the rest whenever you want, allowing for very easy rotations with Zhezhi. Cantarella does not have access to this mechanic, because so much of her concerto energy is in the ultimate alone. So honestly, I'm gonna give it a tie here. I know it's boring, but my hands are tied. And then for the final criteria, it's time to talk about their additional utility. Now, if you don't fully understand what I mean with that yet, essentially it's just anything that's not standard for a sub DPS to have. So just anything that's not really expected, or in this case, anything that they don't share between each other. Now, for Zhezhi, this is going to be the 15 energy that she gives to the next resonator that swaps in after her outro skill, and then also the 20% glacio damage amplification. These are two very strong effects in their own right, especially because we know exactly who the resonance skill DPS characters are. Now, the 15 energy is an incredible asset to all of the prominent skill damage dealers we have in the game right now, being Changli, Jinshi, and Carlotta. All of them do want this energy, because all of them either are ult reliant or have a high ultimate cost. For example, Jinshi. Her ult cost is 150, and while she does generate a lot of energy on her own, the same cannot be said about her supports, because she simply uses less healer rotations, and therefore she generates less energy as a whole. The 15 energy from Zhezhi is an incredible help to essentially annihilate Jinshi's energy requirements. The same thing goes to Carlotta, and she can also appreciate the 20% damage amplification that she gives to Glacio characters. So ultimately, Zhezhi has an insane amount of additional utility that is very hard to compete with. Meanwhile, Cantarella, she has 20% havoc damage amplification, as well as healing within her kit. The healing is the main thing I want to draw attention to, because this allows Cantarella to have a ridiculous amount of freedom within her teams, because unlike Zhezhi, she's not being locked into a Moonlit Clouds or Empyrean Anthem character. She can just as easily work running a set like Rejuvenating Glow, and Rejuvenating Glow is an incredibly powerful set. Being able to run it makes you a very strong character in your own right. This allows you to use Cantarella instead of your healers, and while it might not be as strong for most characters, there are some who are able to benefit quite a lot out of it, especially in Whimpering Wastes, because any time spent doing setup is time you are not using to kill the wave of enemies. So for example, you can run something like Cantarella, Sanhua, and Camellia, where you first use Cantarella's rotation, swap into Camellia, then swap into Sanhua, swap into Camellia again, and you just do this endless loop of characters swapping into Camellia and then to support and then into Camellia. This overall reduces your setup time and allows you to kill more waves in Whimpering Wastes. So being able to run Rejuvenating Glow allows for a ridiculous amount of freedom within your rotations as well as in your team building. But because this is such a niche team building usage, I'm gonna have to give the win for additional utility to Zhezhi. Being a perfect Carlotta buffer as well as giving energy to 3 of the strongest DPS characters in the game is just such a good amount of utility that I cannot undersell. So who do I think is better? I'm gonna have to say Zhezhi, but only for now. Zhezhi working with both Jinshi and Carlotta instead of only Jinshi just gives her that extra edge, and the energy regen for Jinshi also makes her a better character for her, so Cantarella isn't even better than Zhezhi in the Jinshi team. Now, I am by no means saying that Cantarella is a bad character. I'm just saying that she needs a new DPS to work with, because currently, she's not really best in slot with anyone. And I suspect this DPS is going to be Fridolova. So, again, Cantarella is a good unit, she just needs a DPS to work with. But what do you think of Cantarella versus Zhezhi? Who do you think is going to be better, and are you going to be pulling for Cantarella? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, be sure to like and subscribe. Also, I'll be streaming every Saturday at 2 p.m. Central European Time, so be sure to subscribe for the notification for the live streams. Also, join my Discord. If you have any questions, I'll be answering them there. And also, I've set up a form to where you can apply for account reviews, so if I ever do an account review stream, I'll be able to review your account and then send it to you on Discord. But that'll be it from me. Peace.